the great Joe Siddall of Blue Jays Central. Happy postseason, Joe.
That sounds nice. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, it sounds nice. The opposite would have sounded not so nice for the Blue Jays, and there was a stretch there, certainly after the 4 games against the Rangers, where you thought it was a distinct possibility. I saw you on the broadcast yesterday talking about how you think this matchup actually suits the Blue Jays. Maybe you can go a little further in depth as to why you think Twins are a better matchup for the Jays than the Rays.
It's easy, Ben. Just don't go down to the Trop and have to play the Rays.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my analysis. Now, I just, as banged up as the Rays are, as good as it seems like the Blue Jays match up with the Rays right now, I wouldn't put my hand up and sign up for that one. I just don't like it. There are so many weapons in that lineup. There are so many weapons in that pitching staff. Again, despite all the injuries, they're still so dangerous. I like the Twins matchup because it's a team that they rely on the long ball. They got a lot of power in their lineup, but they've also got a lot of swing and miss. And as we all know, the Blue Jays got a lot of pretty good pitching from the rotation to the bullpen. I'll take that matchup, and you say good pitching beats good hitting, and that's a saying. I know it's not true all of the time, but I will take it with a team that's a little bit. I don't want to call the Twins lineup one-dimensional, but they're kind of relying on the long ball, right? And I think good pitching can take advantage of that, as opposed to a more balanced lineup like the Rays that do a lot of things really well. You might get some more chase from them and not as much contact, but they just still seem more dangerous in so many ways. And then pitching, Tyler Glasnow imploded last week against the Blue Jays, but I see him as that high velo guy that's with that big old curveball that's scary for this lineup. And then we saw it the other day when they lined up the relievers that they like to use. They're tough. Whereas the Twins, two good starting pitchers in Lopez and Sonny Gray. I get it. Lopez, you will deal with a little velo, and Gray is different. He's more of that kind of sinker, cutter, slider guy that's going to maneuver the zone. Very, very good, obviously. But they do have a bunch of power arms in the bullpen. But I like the ability, if this Blue Jays lineup can do something special this October, because they're going to have to, as I keep saying. This team will go as far as this lineup takes them, I think. They got to get to the starters, because when you win that 5-inning game, that's postseason baseball in a nutshell. And then John Schneider and Pete Walker get to deploy their relievers as they please, in the order they please, the matchups they want. You get to be the aggressor and put your foot on the pedal when you have that lead. So it's going to be a matter of who gets to the starters, and I like the Blue Jays lineup chances better against the Twins starters.
Yeah, it's clearly the thing that is most up in the air about this Blue Jays team, right? You have a pretty good expectation of what you'll get from the pen. The starters have been really reliable. It's just the lineup that's been the question mark this year. I do want to stick with the starting pitching for a second, though, Joe. And, you see Kevin Gausman, he has been lights out this year, but he has struggled a bit against this Twins team. And, I go back to the last time he faced them, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was just a team that did a really good job of avoiding the splitter, not chasing it a ton. Now, that's easier said than done, I know, but how do you think Gausman and the Jays will maybe alter their plan a little bit? He is far from a one-dimensional pitcher in himself. It's not to say his splitter's his only weapon, but it is his biggest one. For a team that is showing an ability to stay away from it or spit on that pitch, how do you think Gausman and the Jays will potentially change the way he attacks the Twins tomorrow?
Yeah, Brett, this is going to be the ultimate chess game, right? And this goes back. I remember working a game in the booth last year, and the Twins were really on him. And they started to look funny to me. It's like they're doing too well. That's when I suggested on air that maybe they got something on him. Now, this year we've seen it, but I'm going to do a little bit more work today regarding his starts against them this year to see exactly how they handled him. But Kevin's a pretty smart guy, and he will adapt. We've seen him do it. We've seen him go to the fastball down in the zone more, and that's the big difference. Now, I think the key is you can't go all in on one avenue, right? You can't just throw the fastballs up, splits down, because good teams can get on it. So if a team like the Twins gets on that, we've seen Kevin make adjustments where he'll use the fastball down, and he's got such good ride on his fastball at the bottom of the zone. It really just carries the zone and doesn't kind of go down and miss that bottom of the zone very much. So hitters will have to honor it. If they're adapting to that, then he might have to adapt again. And that's why that's probably going to be the most intriguing to keep an eye on, is how good pitches to these Twins hitters. Importantly, I think it's going to be dictated by how the Twins look against his pitches, what they're doing. Because oftentimes, You don't necessarily need a radar gun. You watch hitters' swings, you watch hitters' approaches, and it really gives you a lot of information, and especially that first time through the lineup. Now, the problem with that is this isn't like experimenting here because you could be down 4-0 that first time through the lineup. So they'll have to have the game plan in place, but you have to be ready to adapt and adjust on the fly. And I think the intriguing thing will be to see exactly that, how these Twins hitters are approaching guys.
Yeah, so he has one pretty good start against the Twins this season and one not so great start. But yeah, both of them, he was kind of all over the place as far as walks are concerned. 5 walks in the 5 1/3 in his first start in Minnesota, in fact, and giving up just the 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts, and then the return engagement at Rogers Center, he gave up 6 on 7 hits, but also the Fox thing. And for his career, he's an ERA around the 6.5 region against the Twins, which is his second highest ERA against any team in Major League Baseball. So whether they actually have something on him, Joe, or not, I wonder how that can play mentally on a guy like Kevin Gausman, who has been around the block. And, this continues to happen. Like, even if there's actually nothing happening there and the Twins have just gotten lucky and guessed right so routinely, like, is there a mental element of him looking at that uniform and having some negative memories?
Well, sure there is, but you just said it. This is a guy that's been around for a while, and I think we all know Kevin's personality now. He just kind of rock and rolls with the punches. And again, you're not putting up the numbers that he continues to put up without being able to adjust on the fly. He's done it. He knows he's had to do it, and I think he's got those 2 weapons that he can manipulate. We've seen the splitter do different things at times. Mostly it's got that kind of arm side run down away from those lefties that we'll see a lot. Other times, not so much away, but just down or whatever the case may be. But he can also at times try to get that thing to carry the zone a little bit, to stay at the bottom of the zone. Ultimately, he's trying to get you to swing at the one below the zone. But he can do a lot of different things too. So this is just sometimes it's best versus best, and that's probably the most fun watching a game like this with a guy like Gausman on the mound. And of course, for Blue Jays fans, you're hoping that he adapts and adjusts in the right manner. But it'll be a good challenge. But the part I still like about it is that if he can find that upper hand, and whatever that upper hand may be, it might be elevating the fastball more, it might be doing both. And I think that's probably going to be the answer. You just can't be one way. You have to use both. But it's so dangerous because this lineup can run into some. They don't have that 35 home run guy, but they got a ton of guys that have some power, and it should be intriguing to watch.
Yeah, it's almost scarier that way, right? I mean, when it's the 135 homer guy in the middle of the lineup, you got to be really careful with him, and then you can exhale. But the way the Twins do it, a little different there. Not really a question, just a comment. One thing I was curious about, just with all the talk about Gausman's splitter and the Twins having success against it, I went and looked at Swanson's numbers this year, and he has been absolutely lights out. So I was a little curious if maybe how tomorrow went would tell us about Swanson's usage in the series, but he's been pretty good against them in a pretty limited sample size. In terms of the pen, we talked about it with the decisions Schneider is going to have to make here. Last time around, I mean, look, any game a baseball team loses, you're going to be able to go and find a couple of situations where you can second guess the manager by just playing the result. But, there were some questionable decisions made last time around. How much do you think he has kind of grown in that regard, just having a full year under his belt? And how much do you think a manager will have a say in the postseason in general?
Well, I think he's going to have a lot of say, because the more I keep talking to John Schneider and talking to people around the team, I mean, they are prepared, of course, with all of the information. But John's been adamant about the fact that there are times when he feels that something can, and I'm guessing one of those decisions would be using Romano in the 8th the other day and using Hicks as your coach. I don't know that but I believe that's a coaching or Don Mattingly, Pete Walker, John Schneider talking together and saying, let's do this. I kind of snicker sometimes at all of the criticism, because I can guarantee you, if either one of you were the manager of a Major League Baseball team, all the moves you make can be scrutinized. This is a fascinating game in that regard, and most of it is regarding that. They've got all of the matchups they want, and I think a lot of times when we see moves now, obviously in the postseason it's going to be different because it's all hands on deck and everything's high leverage. But throughout the course of the season, man, there is so much going on with individuals, and we don't necessarily know if this guy's available. We don't know that he can go one inning, but he can't go back out there for whatever the reasons may be. But there are so many logistical things that go on throughout the course of the season that their hands are a little bit tied. I feel like the more I see things like that I might have when I ask them the next, I'll be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it's like a pretty good answer and a reason why they did something the day before, because we don't have the luxury to be down there post game. But I'm probably less so in that regard. Now, if you don't think he's still thinking about taking Kevin Gausman out of that game last year against Seattle, you got another thing coming. Like, that stuff, I think, would change this year, and that's maybe where you grow as a manager. Maybe that's where you don't lean on all the, quote, matchups and exactly getting this guy into the game because this is his slot. I think a year ago helped a ton, and it's going to help John Schneider grow as a manager. And I think this year, just the matchup that might be in front of him, he's going to know what his guy's doing out there and what the guy's name is, and especially when it's Kevin Gausman. I think he'll get that extra rope there.
Yeah, it's just like not a one-size-fits-all approach is the way I feel like it's gone in Major League Baseball, that you have the game plan and you play it out no matter what your eyeballs are telling you, and you shouldn't go too much one side or the other. But it does feel like, yeah, managers tend to do the Kevin Cash thing and play it by the numbers, and probably what John Schneider was doing a season ago. You mentioned it Saturday. Well, it was kind of eye-opening in a very important baseball game that we thought may have decided the Blue Jays in the postseason or not. Turns out Mariners lost that night anyway, so it was irrelevant. But that we saw Jordan Romano pitch in a tie game, granted, in the 8th, and Jordan Hicks in the 9th, and then again in the 10th, and almost get out of the mess of his own making, walking Raimel Tapia. But a couple of 2-out base hits end up winning the game for the Rays. Like, do you think, Joe, like put on your prognosticator's hat is an unfair position to put you in, especially before we've actually heard from John Schneider before this series, and he will have a media availability in which I'm sure he's going to be asked this question. Save situation tomorrow. Who's getting the ball?
I said it post-game, and I'll say it again. I think Jordan Romano's getting the ball for a save in Game 1 if it comes to that. I think that move that they made on Saturday was awesome. I love the fact that they went to that extreme to do that to your closer who's been scuffling a little bit. You give him the inning before, and that was a message right there, right? I mean, we saw it on the TV screens. We saw Romano warming up, and that to me was like, whoa, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So that was that quote. I don't want to call it the demotion for the day, but that was a changing of the guard right there. But how about Jordan coming in and firing some pretty good fastballs? Just looked pretty darn good. Did give up the double, but looked pretty darn good. Sometimes you just need that one to get the wheels back on the track, you know? And I feel when Hicks came in, he gave it up in the second inning, in fairness, right? And we know that I don't think that's the Blue Jays' first choice to bring him back out for a second inning, despite the fact that I know he did that when he came in the trade. He can give you more than 3 outs and all, but I got the feeling that they don't want to do that if they don't have to. So therefore, going with Romano, they had Hicks to go the extra if they needed, but I feel that was almost a little bit of an audition and Jordan showed them that I'm back. Does one appearance do that? Probably not, but I think I saw enough that I would be saying he's my guy to shut down a game in Game 1 if it happens.
The other curious decisions that I'll be watching will be, well, one, who starts at second base, but I think it's pretty much a no-brainer the way Kevin Biggio's played the second half of the season, that he's going to start at second base and Whit Merrifield's going to be a bat off the bench. But to that point, the Twins, I imagine, are going to have 2 lefties in the bullpen, including a guy with a great name, Cody Funderburk, alongside Caleb Thielbar. So they're going to play matchups late in games, I imagine, Joe, whether that's against Kevin Biggio, whether that's against Kevin Kiermaier, whether that's against Dalton Varsho or Brandon Belt, as the Blue Jays, I think, are going to roll out 4 lefties, at least in Game 1 of this series. Who's your righty bat off the bench? I mean, David Schneider was going through that tough spell, 0 for 30, 2 doubles yesterday. I know it's a meaningless game, but like, we are talking about small samples, and whoever's going hot, like maybe that actually indicates something to you that you'd be more willing to use him. Like, who is the guy in a key spot tomorrow against a lefty reliever that you're pinch hitting with?
Yeah, I still think it's Schneider, just because of the danger, the threat that he presents. It's been a struggle for him. It was nice to get back at it a little bit yesterday for him, but I still think with the threat that he presents, he's my guy. Now, the other thing is you have to be very careful because you don't want to do it too early either. And I think if it's a key situation, it could be the 5th, could be the 6th, could be the 7th. You have to be careful because if that lineup's coming back around, you don't want to put a Merrifield in there and then you get Duran later on. maybe trying to close a game out, because Kevin's held his own very well, of course, against lefties. And I think Kiermaier can do the same. Like, those are the guys, if Varsho, depends on the score, right? If it's tied, you want to keep his defense in there. So those are a lot of other things that you're considering, not just the fact that they're bringing in a lefty. So I think it would take a lot for me to pinch hit for one of those guys. And what's a lot? A lot's probably being down in the 7th, 8th inning, and you have to give your best chance. Because the other thing is, you're pinch hitting a Merrifield or you're pinch hitting a Schneider or those types of guys. I mean, yes, Schneider's a threat, but at the same time, there's a lot of swing and miss going on there too, right? So you've got to consider all the other options. And is it that much of an upgrade to take one of those guys out of the game? Because you certainly, ideally, against Duran later, Pagan, whoever is in for the Twins, you want your Belts and Biggios and those guys. So I think they'll be very cautious in pinch hitting, but I do think Schneider is that bat because of the threat he presents.
The other thing that's going to be interesting is how Cam Eden is deployed, who I'm assuming is going to be on the roster. I don't think he would have been called up if he's not going to be there. And that's a smart use of a roster spot, especially in a wild card round where you still get a full roster and you can change it the next series, and you're only playing a maximum of 3 games. Obviously, you're going to lean more on the bench players than you are on relief arms, I think. We almost got to see him attempt his first stolen base yesterday, Joe. I would have loved to have seen it. How much can we project the minor league success at stealing base to the major league level? Like, I know speed is speed, but like base stealing is more than just speed, Joe. Like, how confident are you that when we see Cam Eden maybe attempt his first major league stolen base, that he's going to be as successful as he was in the minor leagues?
Yeah, I think it's a different world up here, as I think everyone knows. I haven't watched a whole lot of AAA baseball over the last number of years, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the catchers don't throw as well. Pitchers don't necessarily hold runners on as well, but there are a lot of pitchers in the big leagues that don't hold runners on as well either. And that's the plus. And I think the work that teams do now with all of the resources that they have, they're going to have any type of any type of tendency that pitcher has that will help him. And my understanding is that's where he really excelled in understanding those things and using them as a strength to get a good jump, for example, not just get that good lead and use his speed. So yes, but a different ball game up here for sure. And but that's what he brings, right? And I've always said, we've seen it over the years, where if you're going to have one skill, that can win a playoff baseball game. Mm-hmm. So, but it's not going to be easy. That's why I was really hoping going into this week at home he'd have a couple of opportunities to do that, just to break the ice, just to get that feel, just to break the nerves, because even with all of the information he has and his speed and the pitcher's delivery and the catcher's release, there's still a lot going on there, and I'm sure his legs will be shaking as he's leading off first base. So it's not going to be easy. And in answer to your question, it's going to be another world up here. But hopefully he does it successfully.
Well, that's why I was kind of curious to see him even in the starting lineup yesterday, because he's not exactly Ty Cobb with the batting average, and you wanted to see him on base, and then he ends up with the base hit and doesn't try to steal early in that plate appearance. So yeah, that seemed like the moment, but maybe it'll come in a crucial moment. Maybe we'll be talking about his Dave Roberts moment for the Blue Jays this postseason. Who knows? Fingers crossed. We'll see starting tomorrow. Joe, enjoy the series. Thanks for doing this.
Okay, guys, have a great day. Let's enjoy it. Postseason.
Absolutely.